So we've got now a router, and it has a handler func, or a handle func. I thought there was a way you could specify these like a set at once, rather than just calling handler func over and over again. But maybe I'm not right. Let's take a quick look at, well, there's not much on the mux here. And their example does seem to call, but it calls like handle and then handler func as two separate things. Okay. Let's talk about, well, let's at least talk about a couple other things you can do that are cool about the system. So one of the updates from Go was that, or this latest version of Go, was that on these patterns, you can specify the method that you want. Now the default is a get method, so this is a little bit silly. But actually, hold on a minute. I think I might be lying to you. The default might be, if you have it unspecified, they will all go to the same route. I think that's the case. But if you have a pattern, or information on pattern stuff. Yeah, here we go. So all three parts are optional. If a method is present, it must be followed by a single space. Okay, a pattern with no method matches every method. So, no, that reads right. A pattern with no method matches every method. So the difference between this handler func and this handler func is that this one will get called if you do a post, or if you do a delete, a get, any of the standard HTTP verbs, methods will get called for this. If, however, you add a method, then you will restrict it. So actually, because they're both slash, technically this one won't work. It might even complain at us, saying like we have contradicting rules and it doesn't know what to do. I don't know. Let's see. Go run app. Go run app. Go. Oh, it didn't complain. It would. So I think it's designed to like panic, and panic is unlike. So there's some big differences philosophically from a language like Python. Python is an exception-based language for errors. So it assumes most of the time everything will go great. And then if there's a problem, the common pattern is to raise an exception that will go into your try except blocks. Go is a language that treats errors more like values. So if there's a problem, it is a responsibility of the function to return that error as a value that the caller can then check. So it forces a little bit better hygiene around dealing with how your errors happen. And sometimes you just take that error and you're like, whoops, I can't do anything with that, and you throw it up the chain. In fact, a common pattern you'll see is something like my return, comma, error, and you'll call some function. And then immediately after that, you'll do if error not equal to nil. That means that you actually have an error to deal with. So this is not something we're doing right now, but this is what happens a lot. And so this gets a little bit like when you first encounter this, and I know that there are some editors that actually try and elide a bunch of this so you don't actually see it. But when you first encounter this, you're like, ugh, gross. I see a lot of error handling code everywhere. But the reality is that computers have a lot of errors and you have to handle them. So putting them in your face, while a little uncomfortable at first, or maybe seemingly inconvenient, is actually tends to make for more robust services, I think. Anyway, we're not really getting into too much on Go stuff or Go language mechanics, but just wanted to let you know. So where I was going with that though is that there's this notion of a panic. And a panic is saying like, I just need to crash. Like crash. Don't worry about errors. Don't try and catch this exception. We're gonna take this thing down because some state is about this is so bad that we cannot allow this process to proceed. And that is what the handler stuff over here says it will do somewhere. Like if you have a conflict in patterns, I'm pretty sure we'll say panic. Where is it? It's going to say panic. Well, it's okay. Not anywhere close to where we were, but that is, it will panic. Syntactically invalid patterns will panic, but it's also patterns that are contradictory. So an example was like, let's say it needs to be able to differentiate between routes, like which route do we take, which path did we select. And one of the things that you can do in patterns with Go, which is this is actually one of the new features, is that you can put parameters in here, which is cool. You could say my param, and then you can access that later. So where I'm going with this is I want to show how this would fail. We should get a panic out of this. So if we have my param foo, and then we have foo slash my param, the multiplexer cannot tell which one of these things to give to, because you could have foo foo, and which one does it go to? So what should happen if this is operating properly is it's going to say like, hey, that's ambiguous, that doesn't make sense, and does exactly that. So we registered two different patterns, and it tells you this pattern conflicts with that pattern. So that's a useful feature of this parameter stuff. But you can have something like, let's see, let's give it something a little bit more close to reality here. Users, and then say user. And then maybe we want like, I'm gonna reserve for myself admin behavior if somebody does this. And I'm gonna do some additional auth in here, but I wanna have a super special secret path for me. And at first blush, this seems ambiguous because it's like if users Matt could come in here, but if it's users Matt, it also seems like it could come in here. But there are specificity rules that allow this. Because of the way that this is like hard coded to be Matt, this is a more specific route than this generic route with a parameter. So we could say hello for Matt, and then run this again, and then go over to our little server and say users / Matt, and it should say hello for Matt, which it does. So that's pretty cool about their routing feature. All right. But really I want to explore like what else is possible with this stuff of if I just use the standard library. So we know we can do routes that have parameters. That is something that we would use frequently in apps. We build pages, we want to get IDs or something out of that, and we want to be able to pull that out. When we get that information out, I'm trying to see like where do we actually get it from? The path value? The match for a wildcard, something in request. Might be path value. Okay. Take a path value of string. It returns a string. So if we had hello, let's just get rid of this, and we want to put in, let's put hello, and this would not be safe code because there's ways to abuse this, so just be aware. But let's make this a format string. which is this. This should allow this. Yeah, this is the print F, and the F on the end implies that this accepts format specification. So we should be able to, after this, provide a string value. In fact, let's just test that out really quickly. So I'm going to hard code it to mat for a moment, and we'll go run app, and that's going to be for the for our app purposes, say Ben, but it still says mat because we hard coded it. But we want it to say Ben. So we can do, should be able to, that request object is what we want, and then we can get the path value. Path value returns the value of the name path wildcard in the pattern that match the request. So if we say this, and then to provide it with user, because I think it has to match that name, and then we come back here and run this again. Now if we refresh, it should say Ben. Okay, but as I said, that's not safe because it's possible to put bad stuff in here. So effectively this is like user input, and there are clever escapes and hacks that you can put in here to modify this output. So if this is a pure HTML page, you could think of nefarious script tags that could be added by doing stuff like this. So just be aware that that's not there. Maybe there are ways to make HTML safe stuff in the templates section. So maybe we could make it safe. I don't know. Let's actually check. Let's see. Let's keep using ChatGPT, see if it helps. Does Golang have a way to make strings HTML safe? Okay. That's cool. So we could say, come over to our path value here and do HTML escape string and wrap that. All right, so we've already can already convince ourselves that hey, there's at least some HTML escaping. So if that was something you needed, you can reach for that. Pretty neat. And it tells us it does what we would think. It changes less than and greater than into an ampersand, or uses all the HTML escape equivalents. That HTML will display them like a less than, but it's actually on the wire 4 characters. Cool. Okay, so where does that get us? We have, I think at this point, I feel like we've explored routing. So we've got some routing features. We can get some values out of routing. We can have multiple routes. I know that there's a couple of other features that, so you can actually like make routers inside of routers by, I think like if this is where, so this router interface or this router, sorry, let's go back and look. And again, it's not technically called a router, it's called a multiplexer, so I'm probably misleading you by using a different name. But notice what it has on it. So we've got a mux here, and the mux has a bunch of receiver methods. So this pattern where you have this thing in parentheses, this makes it the receiver of this method. It just means that you can call it essentially like a function. In the body of inside of handle, it has access to mux, which has the state of whatever was in mux. But importantly, Go has this ability to, as long as whatever type you're working with satisfies a function interface, it can adopt different interfaces and be plugged into different places. That maybe didn't make a lot of sense, but let's dig in a little bit more. So remember earlier we clicked on handler, and whoops, that's not what I wanted to see. Come on, I wanted to go to the handler type interface. So this is an interface that says anything that implements this method can be considered a handler. So anytime you have in your signature something that needs a handler, as long as that something implements that, it can be plugged in there. So if we dig a little bit deeper, we can see that the MUX itself has that serve HTTP method on it. So the MUX, and you can quickly jump from one MUX could be connected to another, and the route that they're connected is via this handle method. You can have a handler that adheres to a pattern. Maybe it's like, maybe you're serving an API and you're on, like, you wanted to do version 2 of your API. And so you make a v2, and it's going to be a different MUX that you have, a different new serve MUX. Okay. So now on your base router, if you have some API there, you could say handle and then v2, and then provide your new MUX. So, whoops. So essentially everything that is caught by the main router will be delegated to the lower router. Now I do think that there is one problem with this. I think what the handler, this handle would receive as the patterns would correspond to the full path that it saw with v2. So I want to say that there's a way, prefix, yeah. So you've got strip prefix returns a handler that serves HTTP request by removing the given prefix from the request URL path. So I think the way that this works is you would do, where was that? HTTP strip prefix? Yeah. So you would do something like HTTP strip prefix, and then you would want to strip off the first portion there, the v2, and then pass it the v2 handler, so that the handler that comes back from the strip prefix is like dealing with stuff that doesn't have these leading characters. I think that's how that works. We're kind of guessing though, so let's actually try it. Let's see if we can add a function here. Let's see. So we want, let's change this to v2. Let's see if we can make our, like, a synthetic v2 here and just have it be the same thing but under a v2 namespace. So hello v2. Okay. Now we've got, if I did this right with the strip prefix, maybe that should do what we want. It's still the router, so this part down here with the server doesn't change. So let's try running it again, see if how that goes. All right, so we've got users ben to do it right. Let's try v2/users ben. Awesome, look at that. So let's see what would have happened. I bet this wouldn't have worked if we didn't have, so let's copy this for a second and comment that out, and then change this to just v2. I think this would have failed because this path would not have included v2 at the beginning. So I bet, all right, let's try running that again. And refresh, and now it says 404 not found. But if we go in here and say /v2 and try and run this, it's probably going to get the full path and resolve. Yep, it did. So you can see, like, if you don't really want to make, like, have to include knowledge about all your paths of where you would want to plug them in. You would much rather be able to say, I've got an API, I've got a second version of my API, it lives at a different path, and so let me take this stuff off and have that. That's pretty slick. Okay. So that I think satisfies, like, I knew I've done some research on this, so that's why I'm able to jump to some of these things. This is not me just being like some genius on like what's available with the Go APIs. Orion, thanks for the subscription. Appreciate that. So yeah, this is sort of where my research and knowledge begins to run its course. What I don't know is JSON data. Like, how do you serialize to JSON with a handler? And then if you wanted to do HTML templates, like, where do you go? I know there's a templates package. How robust are those templates? Can you do includes and nesting and different kinds of things like that? Or is it just a flat, like, one template is the level of depth that you get? Like template fragments is kind of what I'm getting at. And then data, I'm really interested in this data one, probably more than anything at this point, because I think I'm like 99% confident that these exist, these top two exist in ways that are meaningful. I'm less convinced about the data stuff. So let's go back to our Golang section here and see what we can figure out here. Okay, well, should we poke with this first? Yeah, let's poke with this first. All right. Too many things here. Let's go to standard library. If I were a database section, I'd be under database. So we've got SQL. And then this might just be like the raw stuff to interface with databases. Got to choose cookies. Make this go away. The problem is maybe the drivers part. What would be awesome? So here's something I love about Python is that it bakes in SQLite. And I'm afraid that Go does not do the same, which is sad because SQLite is amazing. Yeah, these are not standard library things. Like I bet if we found Awesome Go. This is like the opposite of what we're trying to do. And if some of you are joining in late or